$1.2 billion US per year, the amount that the creature known as red gold once brought to the US each year. But now, the steel cages weighing hundreds of kilograms are pulled up to find only empty ice. A legendary fishing industry is slowly collapsing. King crab, a creature worth billions of dollars, but must be exchanged with sweat, effort, and sometimes even blood and life. 30-foot waves pounded the deck like sledgehammers, and minus 40 degrees Celsius winds turned the deck into a deadly slippery trap. But despite the danger, fishermen still rushed into the storm with a 300-kilogram steel cage. All eyes were on the cage, which once cost $10,000 a load, now contained only ice and moss. A devastating blow, not just to the ship, but to the entire American economy. King crab is more than just food. It is America's livelihood, its symbol, its economic pride. And when that symbol collapses, the shock waves don't stop in Alaska. They spread around the world. King crab collapse, America's $1 billion loss after the Russia-Ukraine war. Alaska was once known to the world as the Kingdom of Red Gold. For decades, king crabs have brought more than $1.2 billion each year, becoming the most economically valuable seafood species in the ocean. With a giant body weighing up to 22 pounds, stride closer 6 feet, the Paralithodes kamchaticus species is not only a wonder of nature, but also the basis of an entire industry. They can live up to 30 years, migrate in flocks of millions under cold water, 30 degrees Fahrenheit to 39 degrees Fahrenheit of the Bering Sea, and each female can lay hundreds of thousands in a season. That life cycle nurtures a huge supply chain, from fishermen on boats, workers in processing plants, to diners willing to pay thousands of dollars for a lavish meal in Tokyo or New York. King crab is not just food, it is a livelihood, a symbol, and the economic pride of America. And when that symbol fell, the shock waves didn't stop in Alaska. They spread around the world. Behind the glory of Alaska's red gold lies another world, cruel and unforgiving. To bring crabs worth tens of thousands of dollars to the dining table, fishermen must risk their lives in the raging Bering Sea. On deck, the storm had passed, but in their hearts, another storm was brewing, quieter, colder, and more ruthless than the waves. The crew stood looking at the empty steel cages, knowing that the ocean's anger was only the beginning. For what was drowning them was no longer water, but politics and markets. When American fishermen had a bad harvest, Russia and Norway from the empty decks of the Bering Sea, the story suddenly reached the luxurious boardrooms of the world, where king crab no longer food, but weapons in the global economic war. Waves as high as buildings, cold winds cutting through the skin, and taut cables that can kill in a split second of inattention. Each crab cage they drop is a life-or-death gamble. Winning can earn money. Losing can cost lives. And when the ocean rages, no dollar can buy life. The Bering Sea winter spares no one. The steel ship cut through the waves in a fierce snowstorm, the deck shaking violently under the force of the wind. 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The waves crashed down like sledgehammers, breaking the thick layer of ice on the deck. Men wearing thick raincoats, pale faces, cracked hands, still bent over steel cables stretched like knife blades. They know clearly, just one mistake, that cable can cut bones and human life in the blink of an eye. Captain John, 54 years old, stood on the fog-covered cabin, his gaze cold as metal. He had lived his whole life on this sea, had braved hundreds of storms, but had never felt the ocean so silent. A loud shout cut through the wind. The heavy iron cage, 660 pounds, was pulled out of the water, the metal creaking like the cry of the sea. The whole group held their breath waiting. When the lid was opened, all that remained was floating ice and seaweed, not a single crab. A crab cage once worth $10,000, now nothing more than a useless block of iron.
Monster crab.
No one said anything. Only the howling wind cut through the deck, the roar of the engines like the wail of a dying industry. No one said anything. Only the howling wind cut through the deck, the roar of the engines like the wail of a dying industry. Beneath the frigid waves, NOAA's underwater camera captured a haunting scene. The seafloor was empty, save for cold sand and the hard carcasses of crabs. The schools of king crabs that once covered the ocean floor have disappeared without a trace. In 3 short years, more than 90% of the Alaskan king crab population has disappeared. An unprecedented mass mortality event in history. Seawater temperature increases from 30 degrees Fahrenheit to nearly 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Oxygen dropped sharply. Millions of individuals died or migrated to colder Russian waters. The Bering Sea winter spares no one. The steel ship cut through the waves in a fierce snowstorm, the deck shaking violently under the force of the wind, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The waves crashed down like sledgehammers, breaking the thick layer of ice on the deck. The oceans quieted, the land emptied. When the crabs disappeared from the Bering Sea, not only did the fishermen lose their crops, but the factories that once bustled day and night also began to shut down. The ports no longer have ships docking, refrigerated containers lie idle in the yard, and the 24-hour production lines are now reduced to the sound of wind whistling through cold steel frames. Thousands of workers in cold-proof uniforms work non-stop, their hands quickly sorting, packing, labeling, and then stacking crates of bright red crabs. The crab processing plant in Dutch Harbor once operated around the clock. The compressors hummed, the conveyor belt squealed, and the cold air from the freezer filled the entire facility. Every day, hundreds of tons of red gold leave port, carrying with them the pride and livelihood of entire Alaskan communities. Now, that scene is only a memory. The assembly line is silent. The conveyor belts are covered in dust. The cold storage is empty. The containers are scattered on the yard. There is nothing left to load. After the crab season was canceled, the economic shock spread like a cold snap. Thousands of Alaskan fishermen and workers lost their jobs. Ships that once sailed are now being sold for less than the price of scrap steel. Dutch Harbor, once the busiest in America, is now so quiet that only the sound of the wind blowing through the rusted masts can be heard. Meanwhile, the price of king crab at high-end restaurants in New York or Los Angeles has skyrocketed, $200 to $250 per kilogram, and there are still people willing to pay just to show off a fancy meal on social media. The scene became a bitter paradox. The rich still feasted on plates of bright red crab, while those who used to catch it had to line up for unemployment benefits. In a country known as the paradise of opportunity, those who once risked their lives in the ocean now have no chance at all. So, according to you, which is more cruel, the storm at sea that took the lives of fishermen, or the economic system that caused them to starve to death on shore while the rich continued to sip red gold at a high price, $250 a kilo? At luxury restaurants in New York or Los Angeles, diners still leisurely order food. Alaska king crab, with price $1,000 per disc. But the truth is, as cold as the Bering Sea itself. Most of those crabs don't come from Alaska, but from Norway or Russia. Two countries are making huge profits while American fishermen go bankrupt. Are Americans unintentionally eat enemy crabs right on your own dining table? The cruelty of nature, the price of politics, $1 billion lost, and perhaps a way of life gone forever. And that is the true story of Alaskan red gold. From a $1 billion symbol of America to a tragedy for a generation of fishermen. But what do you think? Does nature still have a chance to revive, or is it greed and politics that have turned the ocean against humans? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. We'd love to hear your perspective on this story. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share the video to let more people know the truth behind the world's most expensive king crab.